Hi, I'm Dr. G, and I would like to welcome you to the parent orientation for the Friendship Kinderbridge 2020 summer program. This program is a family-focused, arts-integrated kindergarten readiness program. And the more you participate with your child in this program, the more success your child will have.
Welcome again, parents. My name is Tassia Bagani, and I am the Early Childhood Director for Friendship Public Charter Schools. So once again, welcome to the parent orientation for our Kinderbridge program. Now would be a wonderful time to pause the orientation and go and get the red family bag that you picked up so we can begin.
Okay, so this program is teaching your children some very basic knowledge that they need to have when they begin kindergarten. So what your children will learn are the elements of art, which are the basic ingredients of visual communication. They're going to learn more about lines, colors, shapes, space, texture, and form. And the basic concepts that we're going to focus on are listed below. Letters, words, and environmental print, numbers, quantity, math vocabulary, 2D shapes, combining 2D shapes, spatial reasoning, positional vocabulary, attributes to classify, and 3D shapes, and comparing 2D and 3D shapes.
We are going to ask that there is a parent commitment from you to make the most out of this program. And by making the most, we mean that the children will learn as much as possible. So we are asking for a 2-hour per day daily time commitment from you. We ask that you designate a learning space for your child. That could be in their bedroom, that could be in the kitchen, just a space with their materials so that when they are sitting down, they know that they are ready for the Kinderbridge summer program. We also ask that you attend the 45-minute online session 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and the online read aloud on Tuesdays at 9:30 in the morning. Please make sure that you bring all necessary materials to each online session, and the teacher will remind you on a weekly basis. We also ask that you attend one meeting per week called a Parent PLC. That meeting will either be on a Monday or a Tuesday. Your teacher will have a conversation with the group and figure out which day will be best for the group. We also ask that you help your child complete the at-home activities for a minimum of about 1 hour per day. We ask that when it's time for the weekly investigation that you set it up and you ask your child those open-ended questions that are in the packet. We ask that you attend the online collaborative art making experiences, and we also ask that you fill out the online survey, and those links will be provided on a weekly basis. Last but definitely not least, please have fun and nothing without joy. So everything in this program, we hope that you enjoy it, make the most of it, and just have a lot of fun.
So this is an arts-based learning program, meaning that all of the activities are arts-based. And this is more emotionally engaging for children, and it means that children actually learn more information. The more engaged they are, the more they learn. In addition to all of the activities that they'll be completing with you at home and online with the teacher, we are also providing some collaborative art making experiences for the whole family. And these are going to be led by Miss Adia Harris, who is our artillerista, which is the Reggio name for the art teacher. She is very, very skilled and very excited to lead you in some very engaging collaborative art making experiences. This is a copy of the schedule. So I'm going to go through it slowly just to make sure that you don't miss any of the components. You have been assigned to either group 1 or group 2. If you are in group 1, your live instruction sessions with the teacher are from 9 a.m. to 9:45. Those are taking place on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If you are in group 2, your live instruction with the teacher is from 10 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. and those will be on the same days, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Tuesday mornings at 9:30, there is a live read aloud with Miss Adia Harris, our artillerista, for groups 1 and 2 together. And on Fridays from 10:45 to 11:30, she will be leading the collaborative art making experience. This is a wonderful time for you to enjoy creating something with your child, having dialogue as you create it, shared ownership of the result. You can talk about how you made this piece together. It should be fun and a very special time for all. 1 hour a day, we're asking that you spend on the weekly at-home activity bags. And that is what we are going to be talking about that are in the red bag that you went to gather. Parents will help the children complete these activities for at least 1 hour a day. And then you will also attend a parent learning community PLC meeting 1 time a week for 30 minutes. And this will be a time where you can share the things that you're doing at home with the child. The teacher will help give some tips to make things easier and smoother. And it's just a time to connect with the other parents that are in the same class as your child. And then from 11 to 12, the teacher is available to answer any questions. These are office hours, and you can communicate with the teacher anytime from 11 to 12, any day of the week.
As a part of this program, in order to develop language, in order to develop critical thinking skills, in order to develop creativity with thinking, we are asking that when parents revisit the read aloud, which will include 3 high-quality picture books each week from a link for the read aloud, we ask that you revisit it. And when you revisit it, we ask that you will engage your student, your child, excuse me, not your student, in the dialogic reading process. And that has to do with a lot of open-ended questions, building vocabulary, replying and responding to your child. And so through questioning and discussion, you're going to build just a lot of language development, which early learners need in order to communicate with you and with each other. So during the parent PLCs, you will learn 6 different elements from the dialogic reading interactive technique, and you will apply those when you revisit the read alouds with your child on a weekly basis.
And this art program contains different art images made by artists that are very famous. This particular one we're looking at right now is called County Fair. And the artist's name is Grandma Moses. And this artist did not even begin painting until she was in her 70s. So if you want to still start painting, you can go for it. You never know. And so we are going to talk to the children about art every week. The teacher will model the art talk during one of the live sessions, and then you can repeat the conversation by using the questions that are included in the bag. The method that we're using is called the Feldman approach. We have simplified it for use with young children, but basically it has 4 steps. You start by describing what you see. So you just ask the child, what do you see? What do you notice? And the child starts listing things that they see in the artwork. Then you move to the analyze stage, and this is where the children are going to be looking for the elements of art. They're going to be looking for the lines, the colors, the shapes, and things like that. You're going to talk to the children about how these are choices that the artist makes in order to communicate certain information. And so this is a very empowering aspect of the art talk, because children start to realize how many choices they can make when they create art. The third stage is to interpret, and this is a little sophisticated for young children. So we just focus on the story or how the art makes them feel. And they can just talk about it. If it's a really dark scene, then they might say it's scary, or if it's a really bright scene, they might say it makes them happy. And then the final stage is to judge the art. And for young children, all we ask is one question: do you like it? And it's okay if they don't like it. I would prefer that children are allowed an honest response. They can say, no, I don't like it. But then you can follow up and say, why? Why don't you like it? Or why do you like it? And the child can share some more information about their feelings about this particular artwork. Okay, and now we're going to go over all of the components that are in the red bag. So you're going to have 2 hands-on activities for the children to complete, 1 art talk that I just modeled. You're going to have 1 investigation to explore, which I'll go into more detail in the next slide. And you'll have the links to 3 quality book read-alouds that Ms. Begani spoke about just a minute ago. Okay, so this is how all of the investigations appear in the packet. They have the title, When I Explore, I Learn More. Because when we provide materials that are organized in an inviting and interesting manner, children explore more with the materials. So I'm asking for you to take time to make sure that the materials are organized before you have the children begin the investigation. And by organized, I just mean that you are purposefully putting certain items so that the child can access them. They don't have to be in a particular order. So as you organize the materials, then the children will look at the materials and want to engage with them. And all of the materials that are suggested for each week have to do with the art element that's being featured and the basic concept that's being featured. And I will be talking about those as we go through each of the bags after this slide. But the important thing here is that you're going to ask questions, and I listed the questions there. It says, what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? These are open-ended questions that you can ask children as they're exploring the materials. Okay, so now we're going to look at the week 1 bag. So please pull out the week 1 bag out of the big red bag. And after you've pulled out all of the materials, please dump the red bag over and see if there's any other materials that are loose in the bag, so we make sure that you have all of the materials that we've provided for you. Okay, so let's look at the week 1 bag. The objective for week 1, the art element, is lines. We want children to become familiar with all kinds of lines. And if you look at the image on the slide, you will see that there are some examples of straight lines, angled lines, curved lines, and lines going in all kinds of directions. But if you look carefully again at the straight lines, you can see that some of the straight lines are broken lines, some are diagonal lines, some are thick, dark lines. So children need exposure to a variety of these lines. So there's not just one straight line. Okay, and then as they become more familiar with these lines, they're able to use that in their artwork. But for kindergarten readiness, they're able to recognize these lines as they make letters and numbers. And because they can connect this visual image with this symbol, it is easier for the children to remember the letters. Okay. So inside your bag, these are some of the items that you will find. At the very top, you will see the alphabet placemat. Now, this placemat has been designed with images from Washington, D.C., so that your child becomes more familiar with different parts of their community. And later, when the social distancing requirements have been changed, you can take your child to actually visit and see these different items that are represented in Washington, D.C. So as children eat every day, use the placemat, because then they're looking at letters every day. They're looking at images of their community every day, and you can talk about these different symbols with them and have a conversation or play an I Spy game. But as far as the lines and letters are concerned, you can have them, for example, find the letter, the first letter of their name. and then talk about what lines you need to create that letter. And you can discuss that with the child, and you can even use the pipe cleaners to create those letters as well. One of the fun games included in this packet is one with the alphabet placemat. So children are asked to place 5 crackers on any letters that they choose. So they place the 5 crackers, and then you play the alphabet song. And there's a link. There's actually 2 links. There's a traditional alphabet song, and then there's another one. So you can choose. And as the child hears the letter that they have covered up with their cracker, then they can eat the cracker. So they get rewarded for recognizing the letter, for hearing the sound of the letter. So there's a lot you can do with this placemat, and that is just one of the items that's in this packet. Okay, so I did want to go over the checklist just to make sure that you're aware that some of the items in here are things that you're going to have to prepare. So if you go down the list, you see the placemat, then you see the ABC flashcards. So the flashcards, you're going to have to cut out from this stapled packet to create them for the children. They're just copied on the cardstock, but when you cut them out as individual cards, then you can use them for other activities that are included in the bag. Okay, going down the list of the line family that you saw on the first slide, you have a copy of that in the bag. When you get down to the 2 sentence strips for children, you're going to create a name puzzle for your child. On one of the sentence strips, you're going to write their name very clearly, with the first letter being capital, the rest of the letters being lowercase. And that's going to be the card that they're going to look at as a model. On the second card, you will repeat the name again, but this time you will have the child decorate that sentence strip however they want, and then you will cut in between each letter. And then the child will have a name puzzle to create and to practice spelling their name and recognizing letters. Okay, I think that's good for that page. Okay, so now week 2. So let's take out the week 2 bag. And let's focus on what the objectives are for week 2. So for week 2, the art elements are now line and color. And the basic concepts are numbers, quantities, and math vocabulary. So if you look at this image goes with the poem that is on the cover of the packet. And I don't have the poem right in front of me, so I can't read it to you right now, but it is a poem about looking at numbers and seeing how these different visualizations can help the children remember these numbers. But every bag has a poem that supports learning for that particular week. And this one, it's focused on looking at numbers. Okay, you can kind of see it there. Let's see if I can read it for you. It says, looking at numbers 1 to 10. 1 looks like a fishing pole. 2 looks like a swan. 3 looks like a curly hair. 4 looks like a falling chair. 5 looks like a twisted hook. 6 looks like a nose. 7 makes an angle, and 8 looks like a hose. 9 is a balloon and string blowing in the wind. And 10, a fishing pole and plate. Now count to 10 and celebrate. So that is the poem that goes with the visual. And you see how the fishing pole was repeated because the number 1 is needed to make the number 10. Okay, so let's talk about some activities in this book. One of the activities in this book that I wanted to focus on was creating an in-the-moment collage. And so in this particular activity, your child needs to gather different materials, different items in the home of one color. And so they can gather up to 10 items. So this is something that you would have them do before you begin the activity. You would say, okay, let's find 10 items of your favorite color. And so the child will grab 10 items in the home. And meanwhile, you're going to take masking tape and you're going to create a frame on a table or on the rug or somewhere where you can remove the masking tape when the activity is over, and create about an 11 by 17 frame for the child. And then tell the child that they can create a collage using those materials, and they can arrange them however they want. And tell them not to use every item, but to select the numbers they want to use and to arrange them the way they like. So once they've arranged them, then you ask them to count them. So here's your counting activity, and everything is the same color. And that's important because when we vary the color, sometimes that's distracting from the focus of the activity, which in this case is a math activity focused on quantity and comparisons. So the child arranges the collage, they count the number of items, and then you can ask math questions such as, how many would you have if we added 2 more? How many would you have if we took 1 away? And then you could also introduce the term, this is an art term, for art that is created using only one color, and it is called monochromatic. And so children can learn that new word and know that they created an in-the-moment collage, an in-the-moment monochromatic collage. And then when they're finished, you can pick up the tape, put away the materials, and they can do it again another day. If you want to preserve it, you can take a picture of it. That's why it's called the in-the-moment collage. Okay, so let's look at the materials in bag 2, and let's see which materials. I want to make sure that you know that you might have to cut them out. So here you see the number flashcards document. Okay, well, let's start with the top one. Okay, let's start with the flower petals cutout page, because this is another page you will be cutting out. So the children will need to color these flower petals in one color because they're going to do another monochromatic art math activity with the teacher online. So before you get online, the day that this is going to happen, and the teacher will let you know, your child needs to color the flower petals one color. Now they can color them, there's tints and shades of every color, right? So you can have a dark red, a light red, an orangey red, you know, you can do all of that, but they still needs to be one color. They still need to be red, even though they're different shades and tints of the color red. So once the child has colored those petals, then you're going to cut them out, or if your child is able to cut them out, your child can cut them out. And then you're going to hold onto those and then bring them to the session where you're going to be doing that activity. Okay, and then if you go down to the number flashcards document, you're going to look in the stapled packet and you'll find the page with the number flashcards, and you will cut those out so that the children can use those for a variety of activities. In addition to that, if you go down to the blank dominoes document, that one, yes, that's another one where the children can create their own dominoes to represent different numbers from 1 to 10, and you will cut those out for the children as well. And I think that's it for the materials on bag 2. Okay, so now let's look in the week 3 bag. The objectives for week 3, the art element is shape. The basic concept is 2-dimensional shapes and combining shapes to create a new shape. So if you look at the image here, shapes have been combined to create a swan. These shapes have been combined with these Chinese puzzle pieces that are called tangrams. This is a puzzle activity or art form that's been around for many, many, many years. And there are many different images you can make with just 7 pieces that are included in this set. And your child has a set of tangram pieces in the bag. So one of the things they will do with this one is they could actually lay the pieces on top of the image in order to create the swan. Or to make it more challenging, they could try to create it next to the swan. And this image is included in the stapled packet and it is in the correct size of the puzzle pieces that you've been provided. Okay, so looking at the materials inside of week 3, we included a variety of art images this week. There are actually 4. But if you look at the ones that are on the table, you will see that there is one that's using more organic shapes. They're not geometric, and the other one is made with more geometric shapes. So children are going to talk about organic shapes, which are found in nature, and they're going to talk about geometric shapes, which are more mathematically formulated. And so they're going to compare these different shapes and even combine these shapes to create some art. Okay, let's look at the material list for week 3. And so what I want to point out here are the geometric flashcards. You're going to need to cut those out, and those are in the stapled packet. You're going to need to cut out the geometric shapes that you need to use as a stencil for the castle and sun activity. You're going to need to cut out the organic shape stencils, and I'm encouraging you to create your own new shapes, because organic shapes can be anything. So you could cut out a shape like a cloud, or a shape like a leaf, or anything that you see that is not a geometric shape is an organic shape. So your child could draw some things. They could draw an animal and cut it out. So just encouraging you to cut out a variety of organic shapes beyond the stencils that are provided. Then you see that the tangram puzzle pieces are provided, the swan puzzle page is provided, and then you see the geoboard set with rubber bands. This is really fun for children, and there's also a sample page that shows children how to create geometric shapes. So they can look at those sample pages if they're having a hard time creating a triangle or a rectangle, but also let the children create organic shapes with the geoboard. They can just have fun exploring. That is something they could use over and over again during this week and beyond. After that, there's some translucent shapes. If for some reason you're missing a circle or a rectangle in your set of translucent shapes, please cut them out of construction paper. You have some stencils there that you can use, and you can cut them out. They don't all have to be the same material, but it would be nice for the children to have the variety of geometric shapes that we're speaking about, which is the circle, the triangle, the rectangle, and the square. And that's it for week 3. So now we're on to week 4. And I'm going to read the poem that's on the front page of the week 4 packet, because it just speaks about space and some of the things that the children are going to be learning about space, which I think will be really good at building their critical thinking skills, their visual communication skills, and I think there's just a lot to think about in this poem. But before I do that, I want to talk about the objectives. So the objectives for week 4, the art element is space, and we talk about positive space, and that's space that's occupied, and we talk about negative space, and that's space that's not occupied. And when you look at 2-dimensional art, and sometimes even 3-dimensional art, there are spaces. So you could have a sculpture where someone has their arm against like their head, and this part is the negative space, and this is the occupied part, which is the positive space. So children will learn more about space from an artistic perspective, but they're also going to learn about it in terms of a basic concept. Children have so much to think about regarding space, using their body and how much space their body takes up, whether they're going over something, under something, through something, they're between something. There's so many words that fall into the description of positional vocabulary that children will be exploring this week. And it's a really critical concept for success in kindergarten and really success in life. Sometimes we give children directions using positional vocabulary, and the child really doesn't know that word or what it means. And so sometimes it's not that they're not following your direction, they just don't know what that positional vocabulary means. So here's a great opportunity to really practice that vocabulary with children. So I'm going to read the elements of space. Positive space is occupied. There's so much to see. Negative space is open, like the sky above a tree. Making space inside a painting is a way to fool your eye. Overlapping shapes and colors is a technique you should try. Placing big shapes near the bottom make them look so close to you. With small things near the top, you'll have depth before you're through. There are many choices as you create your art. Creating space inside a painting? Wow, you're really smart. Okay, so now let's look at some of the materials that are in the bag. If you see the landscape paper, it's kind of turned on its side, but it's up there at the top. So children will be able to place larger items at the bottom and smaller items at the top, and they'll be able to create depth within their painting. They've been given, you know, a little bit of help, but they can now embellish and practice some of those space making skills. In addition, they will be learning about sculpture because with a sculpture, since it's a three-dimensional piece of art, children are able to understand that they can look at the sculpture from all different sides. So they can stand next to it, behind it, in front of it, you know, whatever it is. And there's lots of opportunities for children to do that, not with the sculpture, but with items in your home during this week. And they also have a little wild animal that you can see up near the top. And so in their investigation, they're going to be creating a habitat for that animal. And so they're going to be thinking a lot about the space that's appropriate for that animal to survive. In addition to that, there's Play-Doh, which also allows children to create a three-dimensional item and have some discussions about space. And now let's look at the materials for week 4. So there is a list. Well, before that, let's start at the top. There's 25 quilt squares that you'll be using for an activity in the classroom with the teacher, on the live instruction with the teacher. There is a boy or girl paper person that's included in the packet for you to cut out for your child. So your child can choose which one they want, and then you cut it out for them, and they will use it for a couple of different activities. Next is the list of positional vocabulary. So there's a list, and you can read the words and then practice using those words with your child throughout the week. There's some art materials, as there are every week. There's some art prints. There's the animal from the zoo that we spoke about, the landscape paper. And then you're being asked to use some objects and furniture at home to build an obstacle course for your child. So you should have fun exploring this obstacle course and thinking about the positional vocabulary and labeling it for children as they're exploring it.
And we are on to week 5, and we want to thank you for staying with us. You are in the home stretch. We have week 5 and week 6 to go. So for week 5, the art element that will be talked about and explored will be implied texture and real texture. Implied texture just means that the artist actually drew it on the painting to let you know that something is sharp or something is soft or something is glowing. Real texture is actually something that you can actually physically touch and you can feel. So in looking at this painting here by Vincent van Gogh called Starry Night, you see the implied texture with the brushstrokes. But what you don't know is that Vincent van Gogh used so much paint that instead of buying food, he bought paint. And if we were ever allowed to touch this painting, we would actually feel the real texture. So aha, for this beautiful painting here. So that's the art element. The basic concept for week 5 is all about classifying objects by their similar attributes. So that may be classifying by color, that may be classifying by size, that may be classifying by texture. And classification is basically just a deep way of patterning, and that's important just all around for early childhood students. All right, so in the week 5 activity bag, of course, we have the portfolio pack, we have some prints, and if you look here within this envelope, you may have a manila envelope or you may have a white letter envelope, and within that, you will have some sandpaper, a googly eye or two, a soft cotton ball, a seashell, and the child can tell you about the texture of that, and a very smooth wooden disc. And so one activity that will be done for week 5 as it relates to implied texture and real texture is that using this monster template, the teacher will encourage the child to paint or draw a particular texture of their monster. And then later, they will have the opportunity to engage in an activity where they actually use some things found in the home to actually create some real texture on another monster. And so again, for this week, the art element is implied and real texture, and the basic concept will be classification. So that is week 5 in the bag. And in terms of all of the materials, we just went through them in terms of the texture bag, the prints, the monster sheet. There's a lot of white paper in your bags, a lot of watercolor paper as well. And please, as always, we'll send the link for the survey for you guys to fill out. And so now we will move on to week 6. So for week 6, the art element is going to be form and shape. And the basic concept will be 2 and 3D shapes. We're going to be comparing them to some degree. So when we think about form and we think about shape, when we think about art and when we think about sculpture, sculpture is a form of a 3D shape. It's something that you can walk around. It's something that you can feel from all sides. And when you think of a 2D shape, we're thinking of something flat, maybe like an art piece on a piece of paper. And so 3D is fat, 2D is flat, something like that you can say with the children. And so when we think about the basic concepts, we're just going to be exploring the different attributes or the different characteristics of 2D shapes versus 3D shapes. All right, so let's move on to what is in the week 6 bag. So here we have something called a mandala. And the children can engage in exploring 2D and 3D forms by first coloring in the mandala, and that would be a 2D experience. And then later, they could actually find some things in the home or find some things outside, like some rocks, some leaves, some twigs, and they could create their own mandala, and that would be 3D. You can engage in conversation of what's the same about them, what's different about them, and that sort of language is a big deal for development and for critical thinking. You also have this 2 and 3D shape scavenger hunt, which will be very interesting and very telling and will let you know where you need to reinforce thinking or what students understand right away. We also have some 3D shapes here. We have a pyramid, we have a cube, we have a sphere, and we have a cylinder. Here, okay, Dr. G, students are going to have the opportunity to engage in understanding that a collage, which is here, which is a 2D experience, and something called an assemblage, which is here, and that's a 3D artistic expression. So they're going to be able to sort of see just how much autonomy and choice that they have when they create, and how all the little pieces of, I would say, academic work contributes deeply to their artistic expression, and just how much they will learn from engaging in all of these bags. So I believe all we have left to do for week 6 is just to go through the checklist. So again, we will have paper. There isn't any yarn. We hope there would be yarn, but there isn't. So if you have some at home, feel free. Or if you have string, it's really for the monster. You have your laminated prints. Again, you saw the mandala document. We talked about the geometric shapes and some empty items that you have from home.
And so here are just a few quotes that we would like you to keep in mind. Pablo Picasso, most people have at least heard of him. His artwork looks like a child created it. But you know, he can paint anything he wants to paint. He chose to paint that way for a variety of reasons and to communicate specific information. So he leaves us with the quote, "Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist when he grows up." So your children are already artists, and this is just going to nurture them to keep considering themselves artists and keep taking risks in creations. Then underneath where it says wise words, there's a quote from Albert Einstein, who's probably one of the smartest people that ever lived. And what he said is, imagination is more important than knowledge, because with imagination, you can come up with new ideas, new solutions, new ways to approach problems. So that's very, very important, and even more important than what you already know. You have to encourage a child's imagination so that they can become very creative, innovative adults who can contribute to our world and help solve some of the problems that we have. The other quote is also a favorite of mine. It states, "The limits of our cognition are not defined by the limits of our language." So for a 4-year-old, who doesn't have the sophisticated vocabulary to be able to communicate everything that they know and are thinking about, a lot of times they can communicate to us in many different ways. We refer to it as the 100 languages from the Reggio Emilia approach. But here, helping children focus on the elements of art helps them to become better visual communicators. And as you know, visual communication has become a critical skill and a critical way that we communicate information today. So we ask you to be committed to this program, to work really hard with your child, because your child is really going to gain tremendous skills that are going to help your child succeed in kindergarten. And the last slide is basically a questioning slide. So if you have questions, your teachers are going to be available every day during their office hours to answer any question that you have. So don't hesitate to contact them. They are your guide during this program, and they want your child to be successful, and they want to support you. So feel free to reach out to them anytime. And we thank you for coming on this journey with us to help your child be ready for kindergarten.
Thank you so much again, everyone. We are at the end of the webinar. You can watch it as often as you like.
Thank you.